Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for another quick book plug before I jump into this review. King Leopard, you can get it on Amazon. Nice, hefty fantasy novel. So, The Sandlot, time for a retro review. The Sandlot. This was a classic movie that I seem to remember being played on every airport bus I was ever in when I was in band in like middle school and high school. They'd have these VHS players and they could put it in, and then there were these little TVs, these little CRT TVs in these. We called them airport buses, but they were like charter buses. Maybe it's what you call them. We take these long band trips, right? Like you drive 14 hours, sometimes multiple days, do like a little tour. Anyway, all the way through college, I remember watching The Sandlot on these. For whatever reason, that was like the movie everyone wanted to watch and everyone thought was acceptable. Was The Sandlot. It's a good movie. It's another one of these classic movies that is really more an assemblage of scenes than it is a really strict by the numbers event sequence heavy plot. And it's more about the characters than it is about the plot. Again, just like when we were looking at The Princess Bride, it's the same sort of idea. The power of the movie and the staying power of the movie really is about the individual scenes. There is a large conflict that erupts, but that conflict really only comes into play about halfway through the movie, and that is the kids hit a baseball over a fence that's signed by Babe Ruth, and there's a vicious dog guarding the baseball, and they have to get the baseball back so that the main character doesn't really get into too much trouble. And that creates a whole bunch of series of scenes where they're trying to get the baseball back. And again, it's the same idea. It's about a bunch of scenes that are happening. The first half of the movie, the conflict is really, the main character doesn't fit in. He finds some friends, but he sucks at baseball, and he gets kind of taken under the wings of this guy, Benny, who's really, really good at baseball and teaches him how to play so they can all play baseball together. So it's him really trying to resolve this problem of I don't really have friends. Once that gets resolved, then we have the second half of the movie. So you can think of like two conflicts in two halves of the movie. First half of the movie is I'm trying to find friends. Once that's resolved, we introduce the second conflict, which is I hit a baseball over the fence, signed by Babe Ruth, and it's being guarded by the Beast, this crazy big, dog. So the first half of the movie, again, the scenes are all about establishing, okay, I don't have friends. Here's these guys that are gonna be my friends. There's some funny things that happen. There's a scene where they go to the pool and a kid fakes drowning so that he can kiss the lifeguard, who is revealed in the epilogue he eventually marries. This is, people point this out as like, isn't this like a form of sexual assault? And the answer is, it was a different time. The movie was made in a different time and it's reflecting a different time. It's really reflecting like the early 60s. But you get the idea. So there's that. Then there's like they win a game against the rich kids. The rich kids who play on their own team with their own uniforms. They win a baseball game against them, and then they celebrate by going to the carnival, and they get sick chewing tobacco, trying to be adults, which is very funny. They have campouts where they explain the Beast over the fence, and that kind of sets up the second half of the movie. Then you have a thing where they need a baseball. They broke open a baseball. Kid goes home to get the baseball. They hit it over the fence. He hits a home run. He hits his dad's Babe Ruth signed baseball over the fence. They have to get it back. So then there's a bunch of scenes like, how are we going to get the baseball back? Okay, we're going to try to suck it up with vacuums. We're going to use erector sets. We're going to use brooms. We're going to use this and that. And like the dog is like destroying everything. It's very funny. And what I love about especially that middle part of the movie is that their view of this dog is like a child's view of a monster. We don't ever see the dog until the very final part of the movie. And that works because it's about, if you imagine or can remember being a kid, the threat that you imagine is always more severe, more extreme, more fantastical than what the thing ends up being. Because you're small, the dog is big, it's like a bear, right? It's like a bear to you. And so their imaginations of the Beast is like, he's like 8 feet tall. They remember all these people in the past. How long do I have to lock it up for? Forever. And there's a lot of funny little things that go along with that. And so if you're coming at this, when you're watching the movie, there's this long sequence where you're like, is this really like some sort of giant beast dog? And it's like, no, that's just how the kids view the beast. That's how they view the dog, whose name ends up being Hercules. And we have this great resolution where, how are we going to get the ball back? You have a dream of Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth says, just jump over the fence and get the ball back, which is like, of course. So he does that. There's this, great chase scene. We finally see the dog for the first time as like this big, kind of mastiff dog, like Turner and Hooch kind of dog. A lot of funny things that you would expect from like a cartoon of people running through a town. And the final resolution is like the dog gets hurt, and in this act of mercy, they like pull the fence off this big fence falls on the dog and hurts him. They pull the fence off the dog and save him, and then he's their friend forever. Right? There's and so it's this thing like, oh, we imagined that there was this horrible animal when he was just a dog in someone's backyard that wanted to play, and he liked playing with the balls, and he was not really meaning to be bad. And then the owner is like, why didn't you just come over here and ask me to get it for you? I would have gotten it for you. It's like, oh, it turns out to be James Earl Jones doing a great job with that. So it's a really good classic movie, and it's an interesting movie too, because in the 80s and 90s, we had these movies that took place in like the 50s or 60s where nostalgia is a heavy element in those movies, whether it's Back to the Future or something like The Sandlot. And so the remembering of the past with this sort of heavy nostalgia is a feature of the baby boomers making movies in the 80s and 90s. And it's not something that I see as much today. I don't see a lot of millennials making movies about the 90s as much, or the 80s. And when Zoomers try to make movies about the 90s, they tend to get a lot of things wrong, because they're looking at, and we can easily make this mistake. We look at media from that time and be like, well, that's what it was like. And not really. You look at media from the 80s, you're like, that's what the 80s were like. It's like, I don't know. I remember the 80s and they didn't look like that because we were mostly sitting around in furniture that people bought in the 70s, right? Just as an example of how things actually look different than what you maybe imagined back then. So, but it does a really good job of looking back at that time and having a little bit of nostalgia for a time when the kids were a little more free range and that sort of stuff. And so now looking at it in 2026, it's almost like this. It's a different kind of world entirely. I grew up pretty open to just being able to explore the neighborhood and walk myself home and do whatever I wanted as long as I was back by nightfall. And that's what the baby boomers grew up with. They grew up with that kind of freedom and like low contact parenting in a lot of cases, where they were just allowed to go out and have fun. And now that would seem like a weird alien world. Like, you'd be crazy to let your kids just wander around abandoned parts of the neighborhood in 2026, right? That would seem crazy. So I do like that for that reason too, is that it's the 90s looking back at the 60s fondly, and so we get to look back at the 60s fondly too, with those rose-tinted goggles about what everything was like back then, and see some elements that maybe wouldn't come to light if we were just looking at the 1990s, for example, or if we had a really accurate view of what the 1960s were like in Pasadena, which is where I think the movie takes place, or anywhere else. But I would love to know your opinions. What's your opinion of The Sandlot? Did you like the movie? Do you have fond memories of this movie? Again, it's one of these that I think is the quality of it really comes from the fun of the individual scenes and a lot of the jokes and a lot of the characters, whether it's it's the what's his name? Ham, whatever. You have the fat kid, you have the kid with glasses, Squints, right? You have the yeah-yeahs. You know, every kid has a funny nickname, and that just sort of, even though we only get little minutes, little snippets of each of these characters, giving them a nickname really helps to like bring that character together. By calling the guy with the glasses Squints, it sort of encapsulates, you have an idea ahead of time of what this character is supposed to be. Calling the fat kid Ham, you get the idea of like, this is what this chunky kid is like, and this is what his personality is going to be, and it just matches that. The name kind of forecasts what you expect from the character, so you don't have to spend a lot of time exploring every nuance of the character. You kind of know what the character's going to be like right from the get-go, and I think that works. So leave me your thoughts down below, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day.